Hello St James, I'm here with Fundi and we're going to hear now a little bit about her story, how she became a Christian and what happened directly after that. So Fundi, you've been on camera with us before during lockdown, you've been part of one of the Unspoken episodes last year, but a lot of new people are joining St James and tuning in all the time. Just very quickly, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you Scott, and thank you to everyone for having me here. My name is Fundiswa Yuba. I am married to Masimba. He is a curate at St. James. I am also an HR professional. In my spare time, I try to be a mom to a 2-year-old. And I think the most important thing about me is I am fully sold out for Jesus.
Fantastic. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that time in your life where you made the decision to cross the line and become a Christian. Now that's really, really helpful for us today because we're looking at 1 Thessalonians, these opening 10 verses, and we hear about the conversion of the Christians in Thessalonica. Paul talks about their deep conviction and he talks about them turning to God from idols. So let's start off. Tell us a little bit about the circumstances around when you became a Christian.
Okay, Scott, thank you for that. So I grew up in the church. My grandmother pushed me to attend church. I attended Sunday school. And then from around after matric, I was left to my own devices in university. So I strayed away and I just lived my own life. And so around my 26th year, I had to have an emergency appendectomy. It wasn't planned. I was on my way to work and was rushed into hospital. And when I walked into the hospital, it was in a particular area in Johannesburg, which is fairly Afrikaans. So knowing South Africa's history, I had my own preconceived notions about what I would find in the hospital. And I walked into the ward. There were these 2 old Danis, and I was like, oh, I don't know what this is going to be for me. And when I got in, immediately, the one of them started connecting with me. Her name was Stella, and she just started talking about her life, her faith. A friend came to join me, and Stella just included herself in our conversation. And there came a point in time where I needed to go downstairs, and Stella, without hesitation or questioning, offered me the robe she was wearing. She just simply took it off and said, no, you can wear this, just bring it back when you're done. And I was taken aback. It's quite an intimate thing to share a piece of clothing with someone. And I was not expecting this from a 70-something-year-old Afrikaans lady. So that left me a bit unsettled. And there'd been just a lot of things that had been happening. And when I was wheeled out on the hospital gurney before I went into the OR, just a lot of things came to me and I was like, God, I'm just going to give you an opportunity to do what you will with my life. I don't know what this means. I don't even know what it looks like, but I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to stop running. And then I went to have my appendix taken out.
And when you came back, that encounter with Stella, surprising as it was for you, as well as that moment where you realised that you had to do some business with God in a fairly urgent moment of your life, really gave you opportunity to make him Lord and Saviour.
It did, but I think at the time I was making that decision, I didn't fully know what it would mean. So I think from a very early age, I was very driven. I was very clear that I would succeed in my professional career. And so had put all focus and emphasis towards growing that. And so when I had the encounter with Stella, God found me at that point in my life. I was working 16 to 17-hour days most of the time, and was probably bordering burning out. And so one of the things that becoming a Christian needed to sort of reframe was, how do you now understand work in light of what God says about work, Fundiswa? What does God say and expect of you as a Christian working in the world? How do you continue to be diligent but still be mindful of resting? What does your faith require of you as you live out your day-to-day life in corporate South Africa? And so through that, I ended up in Bible college for a year.
Well, that sounds like a good place to land, right?
Pretty much.
But I'm just really fascinated because you referred to that to me as, in some ways, it had become a bit of an idol for you. You'd you'd orientated your life around it, you were finding worth and value from it. And yet here in 1 Thessalonians we read, Paul says that they tell us how you turn to God from idols to serve the living and true God.
Yeah.
And so there's an element of that which is true in your story too.
Definitely. And I think idolatry in and of itself is quite insidious because you don't notice it. Sometimes some of the things we idolize aren't necessarily viewed as bad in the world. To work and be productive is a good thing. Mm-hmm. It's a blessing. It's a gift from God. But who you do it for and what value you derive from it, I think for me was where there was a definite misalignment and an over-fixation on work. Whereas now I'm working from a place of God is my source of everything. The talents and gifts that I have are to bring Him glory and honor in the workplace.
Fundi, thanks so much for sharing your story. It's so wonderful to hear something that resonates with what we're reading in our series in 1 Thessalonians, the conviction and an ongoing turning really that really continues even after we cross the line to Jesus.
Definitely. And thank you for having me, Scott.
Always a pleasure.